Hello. Today we're going to talk about combining RedPower frames with ComputerCraft to create elevators. You'll need to install some custom programs for ComputerCraft, which you can find links to in the description. In this video we're going to go over the construction and setup, as well as talk about the options. First, let's look at how the elevator will work for a user. Here we can see we have a button and display letting us know which floor it's at. And we come into a small example cabin. And these are the different floors we can go to. So we're going to go to floor 2. And RedPower frames makes it a little bouncy, but it works. And here we are now on floor 2. If we hop down, we'll see the other floors let us know where the cabin is at the moment. Now let's look at the construction layout of how this is all working. RedPower frames is run by these motors that are powered by Bluetricity, and basically each motor can move the frames in given directions. So we have a stack of up motors and a stack of down motors, and we have the cabin attached via this one piece. Much like everything else in Minecraft, there's not a lot of physics to it, so as long as one piece is in here, you can build as large as you want off of it. And we'll talk a little bit about the construction of that, but you'll see that we've got we've got red wire running up and down the side to control turning them on with a single pulse, and these are powered by some solar panels I have up on top. And each of the red wire controls that go into the computer, for testing purposes, I'd always recommend building a manual control to test if the platform will move. You'll see it does. And each door system is operated by another computer. These are connected via this wireless modem on the side, and the way I have this one configured, the doors are controlled by some pistons. There's a button to input, and we also need to have a detection line to detect where the cabin of the elevator is. Which you'll see there's a red torch on the side of that. So when it comes down to this level, it will come down, and that torch will activate this, letting the floor know that it's arrived. So when the call button is pushed, this computer sends a wireless signal over to the motor control, and that comes down and connects right up. And now we're going to build a new elevator, and we're going to do that from scratch, or near scratch at least. So first we're going to need to connect our solar panels down our giant wall here. We could build it's helpful. We could build right across and not bring them all the way down the wall, but I'm just going to do this because, and since I am dealing with solar power, I'm going to go ahead and put some battery boxes down here. This also makes sure that I can very quickly and easily see the energy level coming into the devices without a voltmeter. And let's pause for 1 second. We'll have to cut that. Okay. One out for motor, and 3 for platform. And cut. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and set up our motors. And in this case, we've got the notch cut out for the cabin here. So let's go ahead and build our motor stacks for the cabin. Now you have to place these just the right way. If you come up, you'll find that you place them too high and they're facing the wrong direction. You can turn them with a screwdriver, and we'll be doing that momentarily. Hard to place them quickly because of that. You get into a rhythm of it quickly if you're building large chains of them. We're doing this above ground, but you obviously can do this below ground, that's fine too. These currently are all downward. We're going to be turning one of these stacks shortly. A terribly exciting part of video. Okay. Now with a screwdriver, there are two ways you can turn it. If you go ahead and right click on it, it will turn the face. If you, I believe it's shift right click, it'll spin the whole cube, which can produce some interesting results. Now in our case, we're going to go ahead and have this side be the up control motor. So we can knock out this last one at the bottom here, because it's going to move the frame down one and be here at the bottom. So we don't need another down one, we don't want it to push too far down. And I'll go ahead and throw a battery box at the bottom of that, why not? Let's go ahead and wire these up to our network here. You'll see the battery boxes over here are getting all charged up, and they're about to have a significant plummet in energy level as those are going to get charged up. Now right now on the motor you'll see that there are dark blue squares. That means that these are currently unpowered. The red will indicate if a redstone pulse is going through them. So we'll come back and check on these in a moment as they slowly get powered up. But for now we're going to go ahead and run some redstone wire. Right up the sides. Okay. As we can see, these are still getting powered up. It'll take a little while for the stack to go. Oh, there goes that side. And now the right is going as well. You can see the little blue lights clicking on. The nice thing is you don't have to connect circuitry for them. They'll power each other as long as they're next to each other. Okay, and now we're going to need to have space in all of our floors for the cabin. So you'll notice that there's no notch there. This is the footprint of where we're going to land at the bottom. One of the easiest ways to go ahead and work with this is to give ourselves some visibility as we're going up. Put the landmark and a red torch right next to them. We'll have a nice clear marker of exactly where we want. We can punch the holes that way. And you'll see they just carry on essentially forever. These are actually used for quarries, but they're very helpful when you just need to align things for building. And there we go. Now we've got our space for our cabin. Let's go ahead and pop these out. Swing and a miss. Okay, and now I'll typically build the computer control center a little raised. You don't have to, but it makes it easy to run the blue wire underneath. So. Okay. You'll notice I'm using creative mode for this. You can, of course, build them all the proper way. Okay, placing down the computer. If you're not used to ComputerCraft, to place the wireless modem on the side of the computer, you have to hold down Shift to place it. Otherwise, it'll just open up the interface. Okay, you'll notice I've left some room around this. We're going to build the cabin and the handles for that, and I just want to be able to access as many of the sides as possible. So let's go ahead and build that structure. So the tools for this are support frame, or your key component. The support frame, you need to build covers and panels. There's lots of different kinds, tons of different kinds. Some of them lovely things available to you here, so you can work with lots. The difference between the two is that covers will not stick to neighboring blocks, panels will. And that's essential. If you put any objects on top of a frame, for example, and the elevator tries to go up and there isn't a panel on top, it considers that as an object in the way, it can't move it, and it will not move the entire structure for you. So one of the things that you'll find as you try to build your own is that very, very easy to accidentally set up your structure to fail. The frames won't move for you, and then you have to start over. So that is the reason that I build that control center pretty early on. We're going to put some manual buttons on that so you can test this structure and make sure that it's built correctly. Okay, so for the most part, we're going to be mostly placing covers. If you have not worked with the micro blocks before, when you switch to that, you get a very different interface for placing these. If you click in the center square, it places it within the block. If you place on the edges, it protrudes from there. So, for example, very easy to accidentally make these little protrusions. So, make sure you go through and click the centers. And nice and easy, we're going to go ahead and paint all the surfaces. So for example, when these frames move down into that notch or up into the notches above, they're not going to get stuck in any fashion or blocked by different blocks. You can see now why I build the frame up. We can lower it down into position once these are all in place. Okay, and important to do that for the handle as well. We'll do more with the top in a moment, but one of the things that you'll need to bear in mind is when this goes down, make it bright again, when this handle goes down from this last one step down to here, you'll notice because it's not a motor here, it will get stuck. So go ahead and break this, put a panel on it, put the motor back in place, and put the red wire back in place. Well, the bright sides of this being the downside, we don't have to turn it. And it's already powered from its neighbors, so it powers up pretty quickly. Okay. For the cabin structure, I tend to put the computer inside the cabin. Up to you how you can put it wherever you want. Does not matter at all. You can even put the controls for the cabin in a room overlooking an elevator, as long as it's within wireless range. So it does not have to be on the cabin. The cabin control I'm referring to is the computer that presents to the user what floor do they want to go to. Otherwise, you're going to end up with someone who is stuck in the elevator and has no way of getting out. And we can go ahead and just build this whole structure out. I tend to put a ceiling on mine. I tend to put a light in there so that way it's not too dark. You'll notice I've left a double notch for where the computer is going to go. The modem does count as a microblock and has to be treated as a full block. So we need some panels. This is the difference between the panels and the covers we talked about. By placing panels all around here, this will consider these two block spaces something that has to be carried with the whole cabin when it moves, rather than treat as an obstruction. If you forget, what will happen is you can go down just fine, but the computer will stay put, and when you try to go up, it will be considering it blocked. Very good idea at this structure, at this point, to go ahead and add our manual controls to the system. So let's go ahead and do that. I always like to have them for testing, so let's give ourselves a couple buttons to work with. Place in this video. Okay, so there we go. One side is connected to a block and the same side of the computer, and likewise for that. So now if we go ahead and we put a button on each of these blocks, we can now move up, and we'll see that the cabin is able to move up, but not down. So that's important to note. Means there is something still amiss, and that could just simply be because we haven't finished putting the covers on everything. It's trying to stick to some surface. So let's go ahead and wrap that up. A little tricky to get at some of the nooks and crannies of this as we were going. That's alright. If you do this on creative, you'll find that as you're marching along, you'll accidentally place things protruding, and then you'll end up with a small stack of these in your inventory. Happened to me a lot as I began to learn how to use red frames. Even just a small stutter and you're not quite pointed at the right square. And now for the top as well. Find it interesting that while we were testing that it could go down. It could not go down, but it could go up. Usually it's the other way around. I'm going to go ahead and put a glowstone in here, so switching to panels. If you hadn't noticed already, the distinction there is, for visual sake, is the corners are colored to let you know what's going on with it. Let's see if down is behaving a little better now. That would be up still. And we have a nice and easy, obvious answer. Helps to wire it. Very easy to overlook the obvious when you're doing lots of construction. You'll notice that the red lights go on in the middle of the motor to help you see if they're getting redstone signal or not. I was not noticing they weren't. Alright, and then here inside the cabin, which is a little tricky to get into if you're just hovering, we'll go ahead and place the computer. And I like to go ahead and do covers on the inside as well. Players are a special type thing, so I believe covers are fine and panels are not required. If you're going to do anything else in here, like have treasure chests, things of that nature, treasure chest. If you're going to have chests or anything like tracks, maybe you're doing an elevator lift for a track, you'll definitely want to use the frames for stickiness. Okay. Alright. And with the computer, we need that wireless modem. And again, you have to shift to place it. If you just right-click on it, you'll get the ComputerCraft operating system. Okay. And again, anytime you make changes to the cabin, come on back, test to make sure both directions are working. Very easy when you're working with frames to miss one thing you've changed, and then you end up disassembling half the structure, figuring out what did I miss. Now, we also need an ability with this cabin to tell where it is located. The easiest way to do that is on some surface of this cabin to go ahead and put a torch that can connect up to different circuits. For this particular build, I'm just going to stick it on the back corner. And again, you'll need to do a panel. As a result of this, if we wanted it to go up, we're going to need to make a notch, because otherwise, when it goes up to the top of this level, that torch will be considered an obstruction, and it just sticks. It won't go anywhere. Now that torch can come through, and we can do wiring in any of these places. Okay. Alright, that gives us the structure of the cabin and the control system. And now let's go ahead and start looking at building the door controls and getting everything connected. Okay. So now we need to build the door to the cabin. Well, the door on the floor of wherever we're going to have the space here. You can go with lots of different configurations. We're just going to go ahead with a pretty straightforward. I'll build it pretty minimally here. We're going to go ahead and, much like in the other example, we'll build this side to be the door here. Okay, that way the computer can go ahead and shut this when it needs to. And let's go ahead, just switching that to light gray wool so the stone button will stand out a little better. Alright, so you'll notice that I did a little extra there. The computer goes behind the monitor. This allows us to display information, and much as before, if you want to place that here, either you have to click on the block or shift click the computer. So this will display information, but the user can't interact with it in any fashion, which typically is pretty good for elevator control purposes. Let's do a button there. And we'll go ahead and set up some wiring. So this will be our detection circuit. When the torch comes down from the cabin, that should power that up. And that's easy enough to confirm if I push the right side. You'll notice right now we're not doing anything with ComputerCraft other than placing things. We're mostly working with RedPower. And you can see here it automatically connected to that wire. And I'm just going to be lazy and run this right across the top. You can do other things with it if you want, that's fine. There's the nice thing about the micro blocks, like the covers we were using on that, is that you can put them in the same square as wires. So if you needed to, say for example, have some wiring but in the same space, and you don't want to display that to users, you can go ahead and do covers like that. A little tricky to get it placed exactly right, but you get the hang of it. So now, that way you can have wiring in the same space. Okay. And again, we'll need a modem on this. Okay. Let's go ahead and build the second one up here. So that way we've got a couple of floors to bounce between. And we're going to go with roughly the same process up here. I got it offset a little. And there we go. Okay. Now, just as before, go ahead and put a computer first, then a monitor. Get a button on there. And we'll want those pistons. Does help. One thing I'll note, because these detection circuits turn on when the elevator cabin goes through a particular floor, as if it were passing through, for example, it would turn on briefly. You can wire in other things to be activated when an elevator passes through. For example, if you're a big fan of the elevator making the ding sound, you can go ahead and wire up some note blocks if you want. You can go ahead and be very creative with that if you're really inclined to be. Okay. So now we've got 2 floors wired up, we've got the motor control wired up, and we've got the cabin wired up. Let's talk about how to turn on the computer systems and configure them. There's going to be a separate video explaining for sysadmins or single players running Tekkit how to install the scripts. A link to that will be in the description. But the main thing here is that for each of the computers we're going to do edit startup. And we are going to tell it to run a program on startup. All of them are elevator control something. This is elevator control motor. And that's all it needs to have in that startup. You can use some of the any other commands you might want to do in here. That's perfectly fine. So now we'll go ahead and reboot. And I had a typo. Excellent. Elevator control motor. Because your ability to type is directly connected to how many eyeballs will see something. Reboot. Okay, so first off it'll boot up and tell you what version you're running in case you need to know. And it's going to let you know no config was found. Enter a network name. So this allows you to have multiple elevators within the same chunk without having any concerns of the two interfering with each other. You could have an elevator side by side, a private one, a public one, those sort of things. Just make sure they share network names as they're supposed to. So all the elevator controls we're going to do on this are going to be the tutorial network. And it'll ask you what side the modem is. If you're like me and forget constantly what side you put things on, it's fine. You can escape out of that. It's on the back. If you enter the wrong side, it'll let you know it's not on the tree side, and there we go, it's on the back. Okay, and asks you which control up and down. This is relative to the screen, so this side here is left. If you're looking at it from the back, don't get confused. Very easy to get your wiring backwards. Level of debug output, you can just hit enter on that. If you ever need assistance troubleshooting, you can change that setting. So now it's not doing anything particularly exciting. However, the computer will go ahead and try to locate what floor the elevator cabin is on. Unfortunately, we don't have any of the doors hooked up. So go ahead and just break that circuit, and we'll get to doing that. So let's come on over to the floor, door controller there. Start up. This one is elevator controlled door. Reboot it. And here we go. We're going to do the first one as a normal configuration. This is the tutorial network. The modem is on the computer's right side. The left side is waiting for call input, the button. The back is waiting for the cabin, and the display monitor is on the front, and the top controls the door. Now it'll ask you what floor this is. This can be anything numeric, which can include negative, so if you have 3 or 4 stories above ground and then you want to have basement levels going on to infinity, go for it. This is going to be floor 1, and it'll ask you what description you want to put on this one. This is the stone floor. Again, just press enter on that, and you'll hear a satisfying ka-chunk as the pistons get turned on. And now we can go up to the next floor, the oak floor. Again, shell run, elevator control door. If you're not familiar with ComputerCraft, to get that little menu to show up at the bottom, I'm just hitting Control key. Reboot it. And now this time we can import from another floor. It still needs to know what network, and it still needs to know which side the modem is on. And this is going to be floor 2, and we're going to input the info from floor 1. So if you make the wiring all the same from floor to floor, you can save yourself a lot of time configuring the different settings, and it reminds you to make sure to review config settings. Little thing of note, if you're not sure what you can do with these interfaces, go ahead and question mark it. It'll let you know what you can do. For example, you can go ahead and do different rednet commands for testing, and we can also do config to look at the current configuration settings. So we'll see that when we copied the configuration, it copied the description of the stone floor, and we don't want that. So what we do is reconfig the description to oak floor. Make sure that took, and there we go. So now this is wired up, and we should be able to go safely reconnect our control computer, and we'll want to go ahead and reboot it too. There is a command that you can do to reboot everything, and what that'll do from the motor control is reboot all the floor computers, and that'll force them to re-register everything. You'll notice that the up control blinked once. The motor control, when it boots up, attempts to locate the cabin, make sure it's on a floor somewhere to be able to give the information. It moved up once and was detected at floor 2. And now our display tells us that we are on floor 2. And we should be able to... I think I built the... Yep. Nice. Fine example of how you can do things a little off. Went ahead and built the control circuit a little bit too low on the device. So just move the panel, move the torch, and go ahead move it down one. And that is now at the appropriate level. So if we come down to the stone floor and we hit down, the motion indicator turns on here. Still tells us what floor it was on. And because I was doing some different wiring incorrectly, varying between the two floors at what height it should be at, the door does automatically close like real elevators. So, okay, let's configure the cabin. Edit startup again. Elevator control cabin, control to save, control to exit, reboot, and then we go ahead and confirm the settings here. So we're on the tutorial network. The modem on this one is on top. Now this is asking for any message that you might want to put in up here. When it prints out the display, it does floor and description. You can change the terms for that. So if you wanted to do, things like sector, for ranks. So you can customize this as you need to. And one thing I'll make a note of here, and we'll talk about it a little later, just because I did up and down does not necessarily mean you have to stay only up and down. You can use this in other directions. But now that this is connected up, we can go ahead and select a floor. You'll notice when we're in motion, red frames does a little funky thing with the computer, just what it does, but it works. And there we go. Okay, and we could go ahead and do the same thing on the third floor. It's all going to be the same process. Just to talk to some of the different configuration options that you can do, let's go ahead and go look at one of my more complex examples that I've set up over here. As I said, you can do wiring all sorts of differently. In this case, I've left the cabin open so we can look at some different things. So you'll notice right away on this one, you get an access password request first. So you can password protect the cabin itself from being utilized. And make sure that's in there. Okay. Here's an example of the different things you can do. They don't have to be sequential, as in you can skip. They should be in order numerically. You can certainly do negatives. If we wanted to do negative 5,000, negative 4,000, positive 2,000, that would perfectly work fine. This also demonstrates that you can do secure floor settings. So if we selected 10, it would require us to enter the floor password, and it'll complain if you enter the wrong one. And this one goes up much as our other one did, and you'll notice we get really funky really quick. This goes up here, and then the top motor is connected all on the same redstone circuit to allow it to go over this way. So this can carry on over here, and it can even continue now to go down. So the up and down is just more for reference, and the up controls a little bit different. You can pause this and kind of look at how it's configured, but essentially it goes up here. That puts the end of that peg sticking here. This motor moves it up one, this motor moves it to the right one, and then these motors can take it the rest of the way. And it works very similarly at the other connection. The key thing there is just making sure to keep your redstone straight, to keep the red wire straight rather. And you will have to wire up these extension blocks. Motors out here diagonally is not powered. To control all the different password settings, for example, we had the computer tell us that floor 10 was secured. you'll notice that there is a configuration password and a floor password. Floor password means that anyone who selects that from the cabin is required to enter that password and have it be correct. Config password is per machine. That allows you to make changes to the configuration, so you can lock it down if you need to prevent users from changing things. You'll have to look for another solution if you're wanting people not to be able to destroy the computers and then remake them. If we look at the config of the cabin, you can have an access password on this one, and there's a couple of additional options. If you want to show the passworded floors, this has to be set as true. If we have that set to true, what do we want to show that with? Secure, top secret, locked, whatever you want to call it, you can make the change on that. So if we change PW show to false, that wasn't case sensitive, just me being neurotic. And we go ahead and reboot that. You'll see that 10 is available for us to select, even though it's not in the list. And so this will go ahead and march on its merry way, and that will just continue up. As you can see, the red circuit just keeps it going. So this does fire up the whole circuit. It's a notable power drain, so just make sure you're fueling it up appropriately. You'll have to do some more creative things on what sort of cabin detection you want to do, but you can wire these up in all sorts of different configurations. As I showed down there, the monitor was on one side, the button was another. Here, the button's on this side, the display is there. You can go with whatever you want to go with on that. Alright. And that is that. Hopefully you'll find that this is a helpful mod. I got very frustrated trying to do pistons elevators and looked to the very creative combination of these two things. And if you have feature requests, look for a link, and I'll be watching and answering questions.